Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our webinar. This is the first of a series of webinars from OpsVerse. I'm Arul. I'm one of the co-founders of OpsVerse. I'll be your host today. And today, for today's session, we have Sadhbir Chahal as our speaker. He is the founding principal engineer at OpsVerse. And the topic he's going to cover today is auto-instrumenting your apps using the OpenTelemetry Operator. And before we dive into the session, a couple of quick notes. So feel free to make use of the Q&A section here on Zoom if you have any questions, and we'll try to answer that question as soon as possible in the webinar. Plus, we are also recording this session, so the recording will be available for you after the session. We'll send that out. All right, so over to you, Sadhbir.
Thanks, Arul. Thanks, Arul, for the intro. Yeah, like Arul said, I'm a principal engineer here at OpsVerse, and actually, this is our first webinar, so pretty excited. So let's see. Thanks everyone for joining. Right, I know it's the middle of the day for some people, late for others. So hopefully you guys get something out of it, and let's go. Right. So I'll be talking about auto-instrumenting your apps to emit traces using the OpenTelemetry operator, right? So let us set the stage, right? Like, what is traces, right? We have people of varying experiences, right? So I just kind of want to start from ground zero, right? All our apps almost always emit logs, right? That's a given, right? That has to happen. That tells you what the app is doing at that time, and it is absolutely essential for debugging or troubleshooting when some alert fires, right? So we're all familiar with logs as a signal, right? And metrics, right? Most apps also emit their own metrics, right? Like the number of user counts, logins, and all that. These are gauges, counts of very specific events in your app. And what's nice about these are relatively lightweight, right? So they tell a good overall health of an app, right, at some point in time. And because they can be stored for a while, they're not like the kitchen sink, like how logs are, right? Because these are metrics that are kind of lighter weight. It's more ideal for dashboarding, for looking at trends, right? Seeing historical data and even setting alerts on them, right? So metrics serve their real good purpose too. But the one thing that we feel that isn't talked about as much or doesn't happen, our apps aren't instrumented to send traces, and that's what this talk will talk about, and more so. Actually, what traces are, for those that don't know, right? It actually gives the duration of an individual operation that an app performs, and that can be like a DB call, a GET request, right? And it's super ideal for identifying bottlenecks, right? So it's easy to kind of run analysis on it and say, oh, why is the DB call taking 800 milliseconds, and the whole app takes less than 900 milliseconds? So stuff like that is kind of good. So when analyzed, traces can give really good insights, right? So before we kind of go on, just kind of terminology here. A span is, you'll hear the word span with traces, right? Span is any duration of an operation, right? Like a DB call, a GET request, and a trace is that collection of spans in a single request, right? So what we'll be going through is the OpenTelemetry operator. OpenTelemetry, the CNCF projects are OpenTelemetry, which standardizes the APIs, SDKs. People hate instrumenting in different language or using different tools each time, right? Depending on what backend you use. So OpenTelemetry helps standardize that. And Jaeger is just it's a CNCF project that is perfect for handling your traces, right? For storing and retrieving. So that's the backend that we'll be using. So yeah. Okay, let's actually set the context more. Now, before the OpenTelemetry operator, right, you had to actually pull in the instrumentation libraries, right? And this is a Node application, right? You pull in the instrumentation libraries, right? Have your kind of tracing TS and file that kind of tells, okay, where to send your traces to. In this case, you see a console logger, so this will just send traces to console, and then run that application with that tracing library, a part of your app, right? So there's a few steps that happen. That it's not hard, right? It's fine, but it does involve changing your app, right? So it involves code changes going out. And so what we'll talk about is the after, right? Once we have the OpenTelemetry operator on installed on the cluster, really all you have to do is go to your deployment YAML, right, and add the annotation, your language specific annotation. So if it's Java, Python, whatnot, you just annotate it, and it'll do everything on the left side for you, right? So it kind of gets things going, right? So yeah, so 1 second. So what I'm going to show is like, what is a trace, right? So here we have a microservice application, right? It's called the online boutique, right? This is a set of like 10, 12 different microservices that talk to each other. It's an open source project you could deploy locally, and let's just kind of interact here, right? You're going here, you're changing the currency, let's change it to USD, you're changing the number of items, you're adding to cart. Now we've added like some 500s on purpose, right, to kind of make sure that these are being captured, right? And what's happening in the backend is these were instrumented using kind of before the operator, right? So the code had the little instrumentation libraries pulled in, and it's sending traces back. So now if I go to my Jaeger backend, if I go back to Kubernetes, I'm going to go to my Explore. I'm going to change my data source to traces, which is Jaeger. And everything I just did, I'm going to search, right? So that was the front end, right? And maybe the last 5 minutes will be good, or 15 minutes, but right. And let it run, and you'll see all these traces, right? So you see here the product number 9SIQT, right? There was a what looks like a GET request to it, and you kind of see all the spans that make up this one trace, right? So that's traces in general, right? Like that, I want to set that groundwork there, right? And what we'll do is we'll deploy another app, right? We'll deploy another app that actually uses the OpenTelemetry operator, so that you don't have to add this code right here on the left side, right? All you have to do is annotate this. So if you guys want to follow along, and what I just showed is basically this, right? I'm going to quickly run by this. Don't worry about it too much, but it's your app where the OpenTelemetry Collector, right, will inject the container with the instrumentation libraries, and then OpenTelemetry operator will inject it with the libraries to emit traces to the OpenTelemetry Collector, which then goes to your backend, right? Which we have Jaeger. So let's kind of go with it, right? Let's follow along. Let's try this out, right? So if you want to, annotate your apps, or kind of get your apps to emit traces, right? A prerequisite here is that you need a Kubernetes cluster. This could be K3s, Kind, micro-Ks, anything, GKE, right? It could be EKS, any Kubernetes cluster. So we have a Kubernetes cluster. Then you need an app. So currently the operator supports languages, supports Java, Python, NodeJS, and .NET. So as long as you have these two and a backend for traces, for example, Jaeger, there's also Zipkin, you can go ahead and start sending traces. For Jaeger, you could just do the all-in-one. There's a Jaeger all-in-one Helm chart you could deploy, or if you want kind of more of a production-ready one, you can also deploy one through our, through OpsVerse, through our admin console, and you'll have a backend to push to. So what we'll do is we'll have the OpenTelemetry operator and collector running on our cluster, right? And then we'll just annotate this brand new app, not the one that I just showed, but a brand new one, right? We'll annotate it with just that annotation and see the traces come in. So let's kind of give it a shot, right? So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my cluster. So if I do kubectl get pause -n webinar, right, there should be nothing running. There's no apps running, right? And what I did is I checked out this examples repo, and I went and I got some deployment files here, right? So ls-ltr, you'll see here there's a Mongo and a Knote. This is a 2-tier app. Knote is a Node.js app that just takes notes and stores it into MongoDB. 2-tier app we're going to deploy, and we want to see traces into it. Now, before I do that, right, I had actually installed the collector and operator, right? So if I do a helm install, I actually ran the agent, our own agent that has the collector and operator installed. Now, if you, for time purposes, you can now go to the, you can actually go to the OpenTelemetry Operator, you know, GitHub page and actually install it yourself, right? So if you don't want to do it through our agent, which I prefer to do it through our agent because it has the collector pre-configured to your Jaeger backend, you can just go ahead and follow these to actually install on your side, right? So once the operator and the collector are installed, right, let's kind of see it, right? So kubectl get services, we installed it in a namespace called DevOps now. DevOps now. So this is the OTel collector, OpenTelemetry Collector, that will now then send all traces back to Jaeger. And we should also have an instrumentation, kubectl get instrumentations, right? That also is deployed on this cluster, right? Through the operator, right? So once the operator is installed, the auto instrumentation is configured to send to this OpenTelemetry collector, right? So this is all you need. So once you install these two, right, you can now actually annotate your app, right, to actually start sending metrics. So let's look at our app, right? Let's quickly look at our app. So here is a very basic app that we have Kano. So if I cat Kano.yaml, you see there's just two resources here, a deployment and a service. Now, it's a basic Node.js app, right? With that just runs on port 3000, and we pass the MongoDB service as an environment variable so that the app can actually write notes to it, right? Or save notes to it, right? And retrieve. So, and then of course we want to expose the service so we can actually access it, right? So it's a very basic app. Source code is there. Like we basically took one that was nicely editable, right? Or demoable, right? So this is a nice one. This could very well be a Java app or whatnot, right? Java, Python, and you would just change this annotation. So so that's Kano. And of course, if I cat Mongo, right, that's just the public Mongo image, right? So it'll just be a MongoDB instance that we deploy to the cluster, right? So let's actually go ahead and deploy it. Now, actually, before I deploy, right, if I look at Kano, which is a Node.js app, right, you notice I added this annotation, right? This annotation says, okay, you know, this inject Node.js, right, because this is a Node.js app, into where I put my instrumentation custom resource that I just installed, right, that I just showed. So now this would change depending on your app. So if you kind of go back to the OpenTelemetry operator, right, you can actually search here the different languages that it supports, right? So right here, right? So if you were using, say, Java, for example, you would have inject Java. And instead of true, I use the namespace because I installed it in a different namespace, the instrumentation custom resource, so that we could start auto instrumenting. So let's give it a shot. So let's go ahead and apply. All right. So kubectl, actually have it. Kubectl apply -f Mongo. So first we're gonna apply the database because you want the backend up first, right? So then we could apply the then we could get the front end going. Kubectl get pods -n webinar. So it's already running, so that's good. So now let's apply the front end so that it could talk to the to this second tier. Kano-f apply. Okay, now it's applying. Now remember, we didn't change the code, right? The code is just the application code, no instrumentation. But if you do a kubectl get pods -n webinar. Oh, it's actually already done. It's actually already up. Basically, there would be an init container that would now the operator, because it's installed on this cluster, kubectl get pods -n DevOps now. So this operator, this OpenTelemetry operator, is listening for that annotation we added So it saw that this pod had this annotation and it instrumented, it basically injected the libraries into this container as an init container to go ahead and instrument this app. So let's actually see if the traces are coming in, right? So if I do kubectl, let's actually get services. Let's actually access the app and play around with it. DevOps now, or webinar. Right, so this is a load balancer, so we'll access it here, copy. Okay, here's the app. So I'm gonna run a couple, I'm gonna interact with it quite a few times. Everything I write gets saved into that MongoDB, right? And the reason I'm doing quite a bit is because with traces, you actually also want to set some sort of sampling, right? So we have like a sampling rate of like 10% because you could get multiple requests, hundreds of requests a second possibly, right? So by a sampling, you kind of weigh the cost with the observability, right? So I just want to make sure everything we do here kind of has something gets captured in the back end, right? So upload, yeah. Anyways, that should be enough. Let's actually, we've interacted with it enough. So now let's go back to this where we were. What is this? Right, and let's change it to the last 5 minutes. And let's see if the traces came in. I'm going to change the service to Knote, right? Run query. Oh, here we go, right? So one of them came in, right? This was for 4.32 milliseconds. It was this trait, a post to /note at 12:16. So about 2 minutes ago, right? So if I look at this trace, right, you see kind of all the operations that went in through this trace, right? Ideally, the MongoDB insert is actually also there. Not ideally, but like basically you see here the insert to the DB, how long it took. That actually was pretty fast, I think, right? And a lot of that metadata, right? So that's the basic tracing information you kind of get with just Jaeger. But what we also did was we actually went ahead, and if you go to our dashboards, we have APM dashboards. So actually, if I go, let's go service insights, right? Let's look at Knote a little bit, right? So here now, because the traces are coming in, we can actually do a lot of aggregation and get really rich metrics like the transactions per minute, right? Average duration, P90s, right? Yes. Oh, the cool parts are like the slowest transactions. Here, you know exactly what takes the longest, right? So and then if you go further down, right, you kind of get the slow queries as well. So in our case, I don't know why that hasn't come up yet. Maybe last. Oh, so let's just change it to. I forgot to change the service. So we didn't do front end. We did Knote, right? So Knote was just our example. You see, last 12 hours, I only did 3 little examples, one to even prep for this webinar. So one was just about an hour ago, and here's today's, right? So if you look, that's it. I've only done these couple operations on Knote, and you kind of see what takes the slowest. The MongoDB inserts are the longest operation of this app, which makes a lot of sense, right? And kind of the slowest query, we've only had one query, right, was the insert. I guess none of our GET requests have we've probably sampled out our get requests, so those aren't here. So basically, that's kind of the rich insights you get with tracing. So we always say, we kind of always say like, go, metrics and logs are good, right? Metrics and logs are good, but if you can, try to instrument your apps to also send traces, because it enables a world of insights on things that developers can do better, right, or can improve on, right? So it's just yet another what they call a pillar, or these days everything's intertwined, just yet another signal in your observability. So that's kind of it, right? So you can actually do the whole stuff through the GitHub links that we kind of went through, the OpenTelemetry operator, and you could actually even access that sample app through through this. As long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, just install the operator, point it to your Jaeger backend, and you're going to kind of get the whole shebang, right? So kind of wanted to show that. I wanted to give time for some Q&A, but I want to check the time. Yeah, 12:30. Yeah, this is good. So actually, we can actually go through here too, right? So actually, I still got some time. We can actually see that, okay, you know, if you see the service insights, you see the slowest transactions, right? Or slowest operations, this post, you can actually click on that post and it'll take you back to the raw trace, right? So actually you can see how you could get drill downs in your applications. Now this is back to that single trace, and you could see why that operation took so long. In this case, it was that MongoDB insert, right? So the ability to send traces just opens up a rich set of basically observability, right? I think it's the next level of insights into your app, right? Logs and metrics are things we're all very comfortable with, and we need them, right? But this can also, you can go on and just kind of make nice little tickets of saying, hey, check on this operation. Why does that take long? And you just always have a continual feedback loop of, okay, what can I improve on next for the app, right? So that's why we kind of really push traces. So yeah, that's it. I just kind of I want to open it up for questions, right? I know I kind of blew through quite a bit to fit it all into this 25 minutes talk, right? So if you guys have any questions, feel free.
Yeah, if you have any questions, use the Q&A section and you can type in your questions. Yeah, so far we haven't got any questions. We'll wait for another 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Questions, we can answer them.
Yeah, Arul, did you have any kind of high-level questions that you saw that we probably didn't, we can touch on maybe?
No, I think you have covered all the aspects. Basically, I think at a high level, if you have applications and you want to try OpenTelemetry traces without really touching any of your code, without rebuilding your Docker files and redeploying your applications, this is a great option. So without touching anything, you can quickly instrument your application, see what kind of tracing signals come from your applications. And then if you want, you can like bring in the full-fledged full-fledged instrumentation if needed. I mean, we have seen a lot of our customers try this out successfully. So if you are like thinking about bringing in traces, this is a great way to get started with tracing.
Yeah, since we do have a little bit of time, I can actually show that instrumentation that we installed when we installed the agent, right? So now that we have time, basically you see this, right? It's saying it's its own custom resource, right? The operator is able to create it or recognize it, and you kind of give the propagate it, like you don't really have to worry about it, right? And depending on your application, right, the operator automatically tells you which instrumentation libraries to use depending on the image, right? So we didn't add any of this. The only thing we set was basically the OpenTelemetry Collector, right? So with the agent being installed, the OpenTelemetry Collector is the endpoint that the instrumentation will send to. This is the only variable. And of course, the collector then sends over to your Jaeger backend. Now it doesn't have to be Jaeger, right? Collector could be configured to send anywhere, right? Tempo, Zipkin, anywhere, right? There's dozens and dozens of different backends. Jaeger is just our CNCF rubber stamped, vetted backend that we all use and love. So that's where that push happens, right? So everything within this dash line is what we saw right now. And then when I went to Grafana to look at the traces, that's everything pulling from here, that DB, the rich insights that are coming. So it's actually an awesome little thing. Like I skipped through this early on because I thought we would run out of time, right? But I think we're okay to kind of show exactly that flow. Here it's that I'm missing the word operator. Here's the OpenTelemetry Operator auto injects the container, right, with the libraries, and it kind of goes through the flow. Yeah, Arul, I don't know if there were any other questions.
There are no questions at this point of time. I think given that, I think we can wrap up the webinar. Thanks, Sat, for this great session. And thanks everyone for joining us live today. As I mentioned earlier, this is being recorded. After the session, we will send out the recording. This will also show up on our website and on our YouTube channel as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. See you all soon again with our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.